Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Crowd Chatter Podcast. Today we have NFL offseason reviews. We got really another 6 videos left because we got 6 divisions left. But today we'll be doing the AFC South. We'll be starting with the Houston Texans. But other news I have for the podcast. Tonight will also be I can't talk right now. NCAA football picks for week 1. Yes, NCAA football, guys, is coming back. This Thursday will be the best game. Will be some of the best games of the week, and there's gonna be even good ones after that on Saturday. So pay attention to this stuff. There's gonna be some really good games to watch, especially with Thursday night. There's gonna be both Penn State at Purdue, along with West Virginia at Pittsburgh. Those are both going to be very good games, I think. Both of those should be very interesting. West Virginia and Pitt will be the matchup of the two former USC quarterbacks, and JT Daniels and Keaton Slavis. And then Purdue, Penn State are both solid teams, and Purdue is at home for that game, so that's going to be even more interesting. But definitely some games to watch. Look out for those. Look out for the look out for that video tonight, as we'll be doing that. I don't know who's going to be on there. It should be at least me and Jacob Serbenski. Don't know if someone else is joining us too. I guess you'll find out when we actually do the video. But enough of college football. This is the NFL. So we're moving on. Houston Texans signings they don't really have, or signings and trades, because that's both in here. Not really anything that stands out. This Houston team is obviously in a rebuilding stage. They suck, and they had to trade away, of course, Watson after his many issues, and wanting to be traded anyway. Running backs, I got both Royce Freeman and Marlon Mack. Those are both decent running backs. Brandon Cooks re-signed, got an extension. They got Malik Collins, Blake Cashman. They got in the trade. They got some decent players along with guys like Jalen Reeves-Maybin and Desmond King. So, I mean, decent players for Houston, but still, it's blatantly obvious this team is in a rebuilding mode, and it's going to be at least a few years until Houston's probably back in the contention stage, even. And so now we look at their draft picks. Pick number 3, many people thought it would be Ahmad Gardner, or everyone wants to say Ahmad Sauce Gardner, the corner from Cincinnati, but they went with Derek Stingley of LSU instead at number 3. I think that's a good pick. Number 15th pick in the first round, they got Kenyon Green. That was part of the trade that they made with the Browns, of which I'll never understand what Cleveland was thinking with that trade, but they robbed them, so good job, Houston. Jalen Petrie was their second round pick at number 5. Good secondary player out of Baylor. John Mechie with the 12th pick, good wide receiver. Christian Harris, good linebacker. Damon Pierce, decent running back. And the rest is all just lower draft picks. But good draft class, I think, for Houston. Top 5 picks are all solid players, all of which I think John Mechie is dealing with an injury or illness. I think it's an illness, but this Houston squad definitely got some good players, and Lord knows that Houston needs some. They need some help. And so all the help that they can get is greatly appreciated for the Texans. But this is still not a team that's going to compete. I'd expect this team to be one of the top teams in the draft again come next year. So moving on, next team we have the Indy Colts, who obviously last year was sorely disappointed with the fact that they did not make it to the playoffs when Carson Wentz completely flubbed against the Jacksonville Jaguars. So that was definitely disappointing for the team. And so I'm sure that that the Colts would very much rather have this team go back to the playoffs as soon as possible, like they did with Phillip Rivers. So they decided instead, because Carson Wentz completely flubbed, that they would trade him away to the Washington Commanders for 2 third-round picks. One of them, I believe, is conditional. And they would instead trade for Matt Ryan, giving away a third-round pick to get him. They also would bring in Nick Foles for a backup, like both of those moves by the Colts. First of all, Matt Ryan is a good quarterback, and as much as people want to say, well, he was the quarterback of the Atlanta Falcons when they completely choked away the Super Bowl. Yeah, he was, but he is a good quarterback, and I think definitely with some good options there in Indy, Matt Ryan should be able to fill in that QB role nicely for him. And if Matt Ryan gets hurt, they have a good quarterback behind him in Nick Foles. So I like the depth that they have there. And then they have Philip Lindsay to back up their star running back, Jonathan Taylor. Also a good move. Mo Alley Cox is re signed with them. Solid tight end. And got back some of their offensive linemen. And then you got Tyquan Lewis, who's a solid D end. They traded for Unique Ngakwe, trading away Rock Ya-Sin. That's a good move. And they also signed Stephon Gilmore. So, really good offseason, I think, for the Indy Colts in terms of free agency. And then you go to the draft. Their first pick was Alec Pierce, wide receiver from Cincinnati. I'm not the biggest fan of Indy's wide receiver core because I know a lot of people love Michael Pittman. I'm not necessarily the biggest believer. I think he's a decent receiver, but I think Indy definitely could have benefited from signing on Julio Jones and have him connect with Matt Ryan again, considering they already played in Atlanta. But, that's Indy's choice, not mine. And then they also drafted Jelani Woods. That's how you pronounce that. I don't know why I fumbled that. But Jelani Woods, tight end out of Virginia, decent player. Also got Bernhard Raymond, a tackle from Central Michigan. That's a solid player as well. Nick Cross, safety from Maryland. That's a really good draft pick. I like that one. And then they got some other guys later in the draft. I mean, later draft picks. And I haven't really heard of these guys before. But this is another. This Indy team definitely has some expectations, and they want to win the division. And considering that the South really is just the AFC South is really not good. And I mean, there's no other way of putting that. The AFC South is, well, bad. It really struggles pretty badly. And so for Indianapolis, I think this team is probably. I mean, they're close to being probably the favorites to win this division. To be honest, it's them or maybe Tennessee, of which we'll get to later. But both of these teams are solid. This team's solid. This team made some good moves. This team has a solid defense and has really been working on his offense for a little bit. And they bring in a good, experienced quarterback and Matt Ryan, who's already been to a Super Bowl even. I think that will definitely benefit Indy. Don't know if their offense is going to light up the world, but their offense will certainly be good enough with Jonathan Taylor in there as a running back, and their passing game should be at least respectable with Matt Ryan in that QB. So I like the Colts position, and I think they should have a really good season considering that two of these teams in this division are absolutely terrible. And we move on to one of those in the Jacksonville Jaguars, who had one of the weirdest off seasons I've ever seen in terms of free agency moves, as they got Zay Jones, signing him to 3 years and $24 million for whatever reason, giving him giving them a good $8 million a year for whatever reason. Says it has a max value of $30 million, which is crazy. And then they just signed Christian Kirk like he was some all-star, giving him 4 years, $72 million, the max value of $84 million. So I didn't get either of those moves. They also re-signed Laquan Treadwell. They signed Evan Engram, who's infamous for dropping footballs. And then they got Cam Robinson on a franchise tag. They got a good lineman or two. And their defense doesn't really have many big time signs other than Darius Williams. But you look at all these deals; they're all big money signings, and of course, new head coach in town for Jacksonville, along with Houston. Houston now has uh, uh, Lovie Smith. I couldn't come up with his name. Lovie Smith is their head coach. Jacksonville now has Doug Peterson, who led the Eagles to the Super Bowl, whatever year that was, and they beat the Patriots. But this Jacksonville team, some of these moves are really weird to me because a lot of these guys didn't require as much money. I mean, you could have gotten them for much cheaper contracts, but instead you signed them for buku amounts of money, and it's like, well, you don't need to give them that much money. To me, it just seems like that's too much money to give some of these guys. I mean, they're not worth that kind of value, and so it makes me wonder why they gave them as much money as they did. And so we also look at their draft class here. It took me a while to pull that up, but jeez. Sorry, I keeps going back to the video on here, but here we go. Now we get to the draft picks here. We got Trayvon Walker, of course, is the number 1 overall pick, as Jacksonville did have the number 1 overall pick this past year. Passing on Aiden Hutchinson. Thank you, Jacksonville, for being so stupid, because Aiden Hutchinson is going to be better than Trayvon Walker. But Trayvon Walker, number 1 pick. Obviously, he was a draft combine guy. He was a combine pick. Couldn't come up. Combine warrior. That's what I'm trying to come up with. He was an NFL combine warrior. Did really well at the NFL combine, which got him to the number 1 pick over Aiden Hutchinson. And then the Lions got the snag Hutchinson at number 2, and well, he looks like an all-star. But that's beside the point. And then later in the first round, they would go and take Devin Lloyd, who fell way farther than people expected. And, those are both, I mean, Devin Lloyd is a solid pick. I mean, he's a good linebacker out of Utah. Trayvon Walker, I think Aiden Hutchinson is better than Walker, but, I mean, that's Jacksonville's decision to go with what they want. And they got Luke Fortner, center out of Kentucky. Chad Muma is a decent player. Snoop Connor, and then, there's some other later draft picks, but once again, this is the same case as the Houston Texans. This is not a good team. It's going to be a while probably before this team is really competing for anything. And so expecting this team to be, great right off the bat is kind of hard to do. And so I think for this Jacksonville team, it'll be a couple more years or so, kind of like Houston, before we see the Jaguars really back in any kind of really contention of any sort. And then we have the last team in the AFC South, and the last team of this video being the Tennessee Titans. The Titans had a interesting offseason as they're one of the teams who had a draft who had a player who wanted to be traded. All these videos. But they had a player who wanted to get traded. He wanted a new contract. They didn't really want to give it to him, and so they didn't. And they paid the price for it as they traded him away to the Philadelphia Eagles, getting a first-round pick and I believe a third as well. But they also, around that time, would trade for Robert Woods from the LA Rams. He's a decent receiver, but he's coming back from a torn ACL, so we'll see how that goes. I mean, low risk, as they gave the Rams a 6th-round pick for him, but, guys coming off a torn ACL, and that's certainly no replacement for AJ Brown. Dontrell Hilliard. They also signed Austin Hooper, decent center. Harold Landry, good linebacker. They didn't really sign many people. Their teams mostly they didn't really do much in terms of free agency. They were pretty quiet on that side. And then the draft, of course, their big pick was Treylon Burks from Arkansas, big time wide receiver. This is essentially, I would say, probably who the Titans plan on replacing AJ Brown, which, I mean, maybe soon enough that will make a difference, but who knows? It either could work really well or work really poorly. I think really they should have just given AJ Brown his money, but they didn't do that. So they traded him away to the Eagles. But you look at their other picks here. They have Roger McCreary, a corner from Auburn, tackle out of Ohio State there, Nicholas Petrie or whatever it is. And then the surprising pick. They are able to get Malik Willis as late as late in the third round, which was very interesting. All the quarterbacks went kind of much later than expected, except for Kenny Pickett, as he kind of went where people expect him to be, was late first round. But Malik Willis fell all the way to the end of the third round, and so the Titans end up scooping him up, and he looks good, shockingly enough. I don't know what people were thinking by not drafting him, but the Titans got Malik Willis as their quarterback. This is a guy who has an NFL type arm. He has a big arm and can run. And those kinds of quarterbacks are exactly what you want in the NFL. You want guys who can move with the football, who are athletic, and can throw it downfield. And he can do both of those things. And his accuracy maybe is a little suspect. But this is a good quarterback. And even thus, to bring the guy in for a year, even to bring him in and have him sit for a year and learn under the guy in front of him is, still a good thing. Not that Ryan Tannehill wants to do that, But Malik Willis is a good quarterback. He definitely will be the Titans quarterback of the future, obviously. I mean, he's not going to sit for multiple years. Tannehill will probably be out, I would think, after this year. And then there'll be the Malik Willis show. But the Titans also got Hassan Haskins in the fourth round. Don't understand that draft pick. I never liked him. And they got tight end from Maryland, Kyle Phillips, and, Theo Jackson and some other guys. So Titans draft overall, pretty solid. I think their team is still very good. Obviously, I think it'll still be mostly run heavy, considering Derrick Henry is still there. But we'll see if maybe they try and go to the passing game more. Because obviously last year, when they were such a run-heavy team, even with having Julio Jones on that team, along with A.J. Brown, when both of those guys got hurt and they were just stuck trying to run the ball all the time, they could not really do anything with the ball. And it absolutely killed Tennessee. Still, they end up with the number one seed in the AFC, but then they completely flopped in the playoffs against the Bengals, even though they sacked Joe Burrow 9 times. That just not a good showing from Tennessee. But this team definitely is going to be a different look with no A.J. Brown. We'll see how the combination of Robert Woods and Treylon Burks complements that. But I don't know if it'll go all that well, but we'll see. Definitely something to look at come this season. And that is all for the AFC South. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Next up will be the NFC South, and then I'll be doing the other videos. Those will come out on Thursday. Tonight you'll also get, like I said, the college football picks for week 1. We'll be doing that tonight. Hope to see you guys all then. But until next time, adios, everyone.